Imagine you coming home after a long and exhausting day, longing for the tranquility of your home and the warm embrace of the person you love. But instead, you are faced with a reality you could never have imagined, tied to a chair, forced to watch the most painful betrayal. Your wife, the woman with whom you shared your dreams and hopes, involved in an act of infidelity, not with one, but with three masked men. A feeling of helplessness and desolation envelops you like a dense fog, suffocating every cry of protest. But what begins as the worst nightmare of your life transforms into an unexpected journey of discoveries and twists. Against all odds, you find strength in unexpected places, learning that even in the face of the deepest betrayal, there are paths to redemption and reconstruction. Your story is not only about pain and loss, but also about resilience, justice, and, ultimately, an outcome that offers a new perspective on love, trust, and the true meaning of inner strength. In this video, we will explore this incredible journey of a man who, facing the abyss of betrayal, chooses not to be consumed by revenge, but rather to seek justice and rebirth through the ashes of his former self. Join us as we follow this transformative story and discover how, even in the darkest moments, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. What should have been an ordinary day in the quiet routine of our small town became for me the prelude to a night filled with unimaginable twists and turns. As a writer accustomed to weaving complex plots of mystery and suspense, I never thought that my own life would become the setting for a drama as poignant and painful as those that came from my pen. The occasion was meant to be special, marking another year by the side of Mariana, my wife, whose smile once had the power to brighten my darkest days. However, instead of the joy and love I expected to find upon crossing the threshold of our home, I was met by an oppressive silence that heralded the beginning of a night that would change the course of my life. Without warning, I found myself abruptly ripped from my role as an observer of human nature through the pages of books to become the protagonist of a macabre tale. Tied to a chair in the living room, a victim of a cruel enactment that challenged my understanding of reality, love, and trust. What unfolded before my eyes that night defied every fiber of my being, plunging me into an abyss of despair and disbelief. I, who had always considered myself a good judge of human character, was caught completely off guard by the plot that Mariana had orchestrated. Initially, I believed I was immersed in a nightmare from which I would soon awaken. Reality, however, proved to be more bitter. When she entered the room, accompanied by three shadowy figures, whose presences were as threatening as they were mysterious, a part of me refused to accept what my eyes saw. Dressed in a manner that incited sin, she shamelessly flirted with betrayal under my astonished gaze. Each gesture, each laugh shared between them was a blade that penetrated deep into the fabric of our marriage, unraveling the trust and love that I thought were unshakable. Struggling against the ropes that bound me and the gag that suffocated my protests, I was the powerless spectator of a scene that would forever be etched into my memory. A meticulously planned spectacle of betrayal to inflict maximum pain. The scene unfolding before me, with the coldness of a calculated performance, was a test of endurance for my sanity. Seated, immobilized, I was forced to watch, as in a theater of horrors, the unfolding of a betrayal that tore not only the fabric of our marriage, but also my very identity. Mariana, the woman with whom I shared my deepest secrets and dreams, transformed into the protagonist of a cruel drama, playing her role with a commitment that was painfully unfamiliar to me. With each touch exchanged with her accomplices, each glance of complicity, I felt as though a part of me was being ripped away, leaving behind only an emptiness. The humiliation of being reduced to a mere spectator of my own disgrace was a blow that struck me with the force of a hurricane, leaving me dazed and incredulous. This violation of our intimacy, enacted with a perversity I could never have imagined, marked the point of no return, an abyss between the past and what would inevitably follow. After what seemed like hours of unprecedented psychological torture, the three masked men finally withdrew, leaving a deafening silence in their wake. Mariana approached me, not with the remorse or hesitation that I might have expected from someone who had just betrayed their life partner in such a vile manner, but with a triumphant smile that lit up her face. It was as if she had transformed into a stranger, someone whose soul had been replaced by that of a being devoid of any empathy or love. With confident steps of someone who believes they are in absolute control of the situation, she began to speak, revealing the motives behind her betrayal. A meticulously planned revenge against what she perceived as negligence and inattention on my part throughout our marriage. Her words, each accusation and justification, fell upon me like blows, each heavier than the last. The coldness in her voice, the way she articulated her past suffering as justification for her present act of cruelty, opened an abyss between us that I knew was impassable. That moment of revelation not only sealed the fate of our relationship, but also ignited within me a flame of determination to rewrite the ending of this story, not with revenge, but with justice. The hours following my release from the bonds were a blur of conflicting emotions. The pain of betrayal struggled against the urgency to act, to do something to regain control of my life that seemed to have been ripped from me. In the silence of our home, now echoing with the memories of an unimaginable betrayal, I began to gather the pieces of what had been broken. Mariana's plan, though executed with a precision that at first seemed relentless, had left traces. Driven by a mixture of pain and determination, I began to compile evidence from the fateful night, using the skills of observation and deduction that until then had been tools of my trade as a writer. Each recovered text message, each hidden recording, became a piece of the puzzle that I was desperate to complete. It was a search for justice, yes, but also for a sense of closure, for a way to understand how the person I loved could have become the architect of my ruin. My investigation revealed a web of lies and manipulations that went far beyond what I could have foreseen. Mariana, far from being an unhappy wife seeking revenge for perceived neglect, was in fact the mastermind behind a complex scheme aimed at exploiting emotional vulnerabilities for personal gain. The men who had invaded our home that night were not mere participants in a passionate revenge. They were accomplices in a game of manipulation and extortion. Each discovery opened new paths of investigation, leading me to an underworld of betrayals that I never imagined existed in our quiet community. Armed with a growing dossier of evidence, I was not only building the case against Mariana and her associates, I was also uncovering the truth about the woman with whom I had shared my life, a truth as dark as the plots of my novels. The confrontation that followed my collection of evidence was both a turning point and a moment of brutal clarity. I invited Mariana for a conversation under the pretext of discussing our future, but in reality, I was prepared to confront her with everything I had discovered. Her reaction upon being confronted with the evidence of her actions was a mixture of shock, denial, and finally anger. But what surprised me the most was the absence of remorse, the lack of any sign of regret for the lives she had shattered, including ours. It was at this moment that I realized that the Mariana I knew and loved never existed. In her place, there was only a stranger, whose actions were driven by motivations that I could never fully understand. The decision to take Mariana's story and that of her accomplices public was driven not only by a desire for justice, but also by the need to warn others about the dangers of manipulation and betrayal. I organized a press conference presenting the evidence I had collected, not as a betrayed husband seeking revenge, but as a concerned citizen for the well-being of our community. The repercussions were immediate and far-reaching, triggering a wave of support from victims and the community, as well as decisive action from the authorities. Mariana and her accomplices, now exposed to the light of truth, saw their world of lies crumble around them. Forced to face the legal and social consequences of their actions. The community's reaction to the revelation of Mariana's activities was a mixture of shock, outrage, and, for some, a profound sadness for the woman they thought they knew. While some rushed to offer their support, others struggled to reconcile the image of the Mariana they knew with the person revealed by the evidence. It was a tumultuous period, where the truth provoked waves of change, not only in the lives directly affected by her actions, but throughout the community. For me, it was a period of deep reflection, a moment to evaluate not only Mariana's actions, but also my own responses to them. The pursuit of justice had become a journey of self-discovery, revealing strengths and vulnerabilities that I did not know I possessed. Mariana, for her part, faced not only public scrutiny but also a painful personal awakening. Confronted with the reality of her actions and their devastating consequences, she found herself isolated, not only by the bars of a cell, but by the weight of her own mistakes. It was a tragic end for someone who, at one point, had been the most important person in my life. But it was also a somber reminder that the choices we make can lead us down paths we never expected to tread. In the months that followed, I dedicated myself to rebuilding my life, both professionally and personally. The traumatic experience became the inspiration for my next book, a work that explored not only the darkness of human betrayal, but also the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Writing about what I had lived through was cathartic, a way to process the pain and shock of having been betrayed in such a profound way. The success of the book was unexpected but welcome, serving as a reminder that even in the worst situations, there can be a silver lining. The transformation I underwent from a silent victim of betrayal to a vocal survivor and finally to an active advocate for others who had faced similar adversities unfolded as an unexpected chapter in my own life story. This personal metamorphosis was not without its inner struggles, marked by moments of profound doubt and vulnerability. Sleepless nights became my frequent companions as I struggled to find peace in the quietude of the early morning hours, reliving the events that had shattered the normality of my existence. The path to healing forced me to confront the still open wounds, to accept the pain not as an enemy, but as a rigorous teacher who, through its arduous lessons, propelled me toward growth and understanding. The support I received from friends, family, and even strangers was a balm to my tormented soul. They provided not only a shoulder for me to lean on in moments of weakness, but also mirrors through which I could see myself not as the victim of a tragic narrative, but as the protagonist of a journey of redemption. The decision to channel my pain and experience into a book was a crucial step in this healing process, allowing me to transform negativity into something tangible that could potentially offer solace and understanding to others. The surprising reception of the book and the subsequent opportunities to share my story in lectures and workshops reinforced my conviction in the importance of giving voice to suffering silenced by shame and fear. Every interaction, every handshake, every look of gratitude from someone who saw themselves reflected in the pages of my story solidified my new identity as a beacon of hope for those still navigating the turbulent waters of betrayal and recovery. This role, though never chosen, became a source of strength and purpose, guiding me through the darkness to a new light of understanding and shared empathy. The wave of responses that followed the publication of my book and the speeches I delivered was nothing short of transformative, both for me and for those who found themselves in the grips of their own silent battles. The community that began to form around the shared stories was made up of people from all walks of life, each carrying the pain of untold betrayals, seeking a safe harbor where they could finally open up and be understood without judgment. Seeing this support network expand, reaching those who felt isolated in their pain, was one of the most rewarding and humbling experiences I have ever had. It was a powerful reminder that even in the greatest of storms, we are not alone. There are always others facing similar tempests, reaching out in solidarity. This new phase of my life, emerging from the ashes of a deeply traumatic experience, has become a journey of shared discovery. Each story shared with me added another layer to my understanding of human resilience, our innate ability to find strength even in the darkest moments. Becoming a focal point for discussions on overcoming and healing brought a new purpose to my existence, one that transcended my own story of pain. It was as if, by helping others navigate their own storms, I also found healing for my own wounds. A healing not found in revenge or resentment, but in empathy, understanding, and ultimately, forgiveness. This unexpected role as a mentor and confidant reinforced my belief that by sharing our stories, by giving voice to what is often kept silent, we can break the cycles of pain and isolation. With every presentation, with every chapter written, I saw the walls that separated us crumbling, giving way to bridges built on mutual understanding and compassion. It was a deeply cathartic process, one that not only relieved the burden of my own emotional baggage, but also offered others the tools to begin easing theirs. Mariana's journey and that of her accomplices, from the moment of their exposure to facing the repercussions of their actions, served as a dark and constant reminder of the deep scars left by betrayal and manipulation. For Mariana especially, the path to redemption was fraught with uncertainties. The occasional glimpses into court proceedings and sporadic news that reached me outlined a steep descent of someone who, driven by distorted ambitions, found herself isolated not only by social rejection, but also by the overwhelming weight of her choices. The consequences of her actions, once unraveled in the light of truth and public scrutiny, left no room for doubt about the magnitude of the damage caused, not only to the direct victims, but to the very fabric of trust that underpins our dearest relationships. Observing Mariana face the consequences of her actions was a process laden with complex emotions. On one hand, there was an undeniable sense of justice being served, a necessary closure that allowed her victims, in some way, to begin finding some sense of peace and closure. On the other hand, it was impossible to ignore the sadness accompanying the verdict of her story. A sadness not for the person she turned out to be, but for the loss of what once was, or could have been, if different choices had been made. This final chapter, though necessary, was not a cause for celebration, but rather for reflection on the paths we choose and the repercussions of those choices, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of those around us. The visits to the courtroom, the circulating news, and the accounts of those also impacted by her actions formed a mosaic of lives altered by a web of disappointments. It was painful to witness, even from afar, the unraveling of a story marked by so many wrong decisions. However, this observation paradoxically offered me a form of resolution and closure, closing a cycle that began on that fateful night, allowing me to finally look towards the future with a new perspective, forged in the adversities faced, but with renewed hope for better days ahead. Looking back on the winding and often dark road I've traveled since that night that turned my life upside down, I can't help but reflect on the intricate nature of human destiny. The journey from darkness to light, from despair to rebirth, is punctuated not only by the choices we make, but also by the responses we give to the adversities imposed by circumstances beyond our control. This journey has taught me about the impermanence of situations and the resilient strength that resides at the core of each of us, a strength often unknown until tested by the stormy winds of betrayal and misfortune. The story I've lived, though unique in its details, is universal in its theme, a narrative about losing and finding oneself in the ruins of shattered dreams. Every step taken in overcoming Mariana's web of deception was, in a way, a step towards greater self-awareness and understanding of the world around me. The healing process, though arduous and filled with moments of regression, also proved to be an opportunity to rebuild my identity, no longer as the victim of a narrative written by another, but as the author of my own story of overcoming. The resilience found in the solidarity of strangers who became fellow travelers, in shared empathy, and in the lessons learned in overcoming adversity, turned into the ink with which I began to write new chapters of my life. Thus, this story, with its painful yet eventually redeeming twists and turns, became a testimony not only to my own growth, but also to the human capacity to turn pain into purpose, despair into hope. The legacy of this experience, though marked by scars, is a deeper understanding of the complexity of human relationships, the fragility of trust, and the indomitable strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. In the end, it is how we choose to respond to life's challenges that defines us, and despite everything, I chose to move forward, embracing the lessons learned and looking to the future with a renewed sense of purpose and optimism. At the end of this remarkable journey, I emerged not as the victim of a plot of betrayal, but as someone forged by adversity, with a deeper understanding of human resilience and the capacity for overcoming. The revelation of Mariana and her accomplices' true colors not only triggered a chain of events that led them to justice, but also allowed me to close a painful chapter of my life, making room for new beginnings. Overcoming didn't come from vengeance, but from the pursuit of justice and the will to rebuild myself and my reality. Finding strength in the depths of despair taught me about the impermanence of situations and the importance of moving forward, regardless of the obstacles. The pain of betrayal turned into a life lesson, a reminder that we are capable of facing adversity and emerging stronger and wiser. And you, what would you do in the same situation? Could you find the strength to rise again and seek a new path? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories of resilience and renewal. Your journey may be tough, but remember, you are not alone. We are here to explore life's challenges and victories together. Until the next story, and remember, there is always hope even in the darkest moments.